So, guys, I do want to talk about AEW Collision, and I actually went all the way down to South Dakota to watch the show. And what I do have to say was that I didn't really enjoy the show at all. I think it was very poorly produced, and I know like some people may be a little like, what the hell are you talking about? Because when I went to the show, there was a lot of people who were really into the show, really into AEW, and it's kind of like what they say about AEW. It appeals to diehard fans, but they don't appeal to a general audience. And I think that some of the issues were, again, there are many wrestlers that, like especially in the ROH shows, like who the hell is this guy? Who the hell is that guy, really? And once again, with ROH and this show, they really only cared about just having matches. They didn't really care about get a better view. They really did not care about telling stories, especially since you have All Out. They could have just had two matches or three matches at most announced for All Out, just to say something like, okay, we have a week into the show, but we got to announce more matches. And I also felt that they had like their B crews tonight. They didn't really have a lot of people that they cared about on the show. So the thing about it, the first thing I'm going to say is that they had like the dark matches, and they're all Ring of Honor matches. And I think a majority of the matches are like, who the hell are all these people? And I've watched Ring of Honor, but it feels like there are people that are new or people that are jobbers and all that. And the other issue with Ring of Honor is that they seem to go through like 3 or 4 matches within an hour, and most of it's just like jobber matches. So you don't know who these people are. They don't get on the microphone and introduce themselves. They don't say things like, I want to go out, I'm going after Athena's women's title or Mark Briscoe's men's title. Or, I want some recognition. I want, one day you're going to see me on the main event roster. So there's really no tying into a lot of different stories. So the first match was Orange Cassidy, Kyle O'Reilly, and Hologram versus the Beast Mortos, Johnny TV, and also Leo Rush, I'm saying Lee Moriarty. So what I have to say is that, another thing that I'm not liking about Collision is 100%, if Hologram is getting all these really big reactions, can he please have a match at All Out? Tony Khan, you really have to start doing that. When you look at all these wrestlers that are getting attention, you have to build stories with them. You have to have them have pay-per-view matches. You have to have them produced on bigger shows. That's kind of why I was saying something like, for Wembley Stadium, it was great that you guys had a match with Dustin Rhodes, the Von Erichs, Kevin Von Erich, and the Undisputed Kingdom, and a couple of other people, because they've worked so hard through the year, really. It would be good to kind of throw them a freaking bear to crow Dr. Evil. But when you have somebody like Hologram, you really have to make him a really big deal. He did a lot of great flips. He had a lot of great charisma. What if, Orange Cassidy doesn't have a match? What if he and Orange Cassidy decide to have a match with each other, just to kind of like, test each other's abilities and they shake hands? Like that would be a good, like having a match and tying in a story, because after they went to the next match. The other thing that I wanted to say is that the Beast Mortos also is doing a really great job. I think a lot of people really like his look. He's a complete badass. But one thing that I didn't like is he had Johnny TV and Ty Valkyrie kissing, and he did this comedy spot where somebody puts his hands on Mordo's eyes and all that. So I really felt that whoever did that should be like talked to and say, don't do that. Mordos, he's like a bull monster. So he's like Luchasaurus, a dinosaur monster and a bull monster. So they have to be produced like that. They cannot be produced as jokes or comedy types of characters. So I really just felt that, I really just felt that it, to me, was not a good match, because, you really didn't lead to a story or anything like that. I think the action was great, but, where's the story out of this? The next match on the card, and I'm going to do this a little out of order. The next match that I do remember is you had you had Tamura Ishii versus Kyle O'Reilly a little late in the show is the penultimate match. And what I want to say is that two things. That number one, it's very unfortunate that the Don Callis family, they're just there to be there. They're not really there to kind of have a purpose. They need to start having something about them. They have to have, they really have to start doing something with them. Because, again, you have this faction, you have somebody like Don Callis that gets a reaction. Could you do something where the EVPs are talking about domination? What if you had the EVPs take over Dynamite, and then you had the EVPs give power to Christian, and the Patriarch took over ROH, or they took over, Collision, or you had Don Callis in that role. Like, that would be really good. Give them a goal, give them a direction. Don't just have them be up and down the roster. But the match that they had with Tamura Ishii was crazy. Like, really, this thing about Tamura Ishii trying to do Hurricane Ranas and that getting countered into a Styles Clash attempt or a powerbomb attempt. The athleticism that they had, the few strength that Kyle O'Reilly had with Tamura Ishii was just beyond excellent. It was excellent. And it's like what I've said, where do you go with Kyle O'Reilly? No, with Kyle Fletcher. So where do you go with Kyle Fletcher? He just had this great match with Tamura Ishii. He really comes off as like a younger AJ Styles. But what do we do with him? We just have Don Callis come down. People boo Don Callis, and we do nothing with him. Why can't you hear the Rainmaker Okada say like, okay, bitch, I want to face you, and all that. Why that would be a good match, Kyle Fletcher versus Okada, or something else really, So again, there's no story within that. The next match that they had was FTR. The next match that they had was like FTR versus somebody. I think it was Undisputed Kingdom, if I'm corrected. It was like the Undisputed Kingdom. But what I would have to say is that there's really nothing to this match, and I really and also, as you know, we all know that Undisputed Kingdom, they always lose, and that's that really. And it was just a waste of time for me because Undisputed Kingdom, they usually lose. You have to build them as good competitors. They get beaten down by the Grizzly Young veterans. Could the Grizzly Young veterans say something like, okay, we want to challenge you to a match at All Out, build another match? They had Buddy Matthews have a match, but it was like against like a local jobber, I believe, and then Maximilian Miles say something like they're going to have a match next week with the House of Black, and it's something like it's going to be like a mix of a fashion show. And it's like, again, what would have happened if they said, let's wait until All Out for that idea? The other thing that I'm going to say is that there was another match on the card that I don't remember. They had another like trios match or something like that, and they had another like jobber match, but I don't really remember it, and I don't really want to like look into it because none of the matches were good. The main event, they actually did tell a story. It was like a fatal 4-way for a TBS title shot at All Out. And the bad thing that they did was they actually the fatal 4-way match was announced tonight, but they didn't. But they were too lazy to do something like actually like show graphics or announce it on live television. They should have just announced it beforehand. This is a fatal 4-way match for the women's for a shot at the TBS Women's Championship. And then also the other issue is, what does it say about Mariah May and her title if you're treating the Women's TBS Championship like the title to beat, really? Obviously Sasha Banks is holding it, so that's one of the reasons why it's being treated as this very prestigious title. So I do kind of wonder a little bit, does this really help or hurt the women's division because you're treating their secondary title like their main event title? So with that said, I really appreciate the backstage interviews that they do. Like Queen Aminata is talking about, just wanting to have it. Serena Deeb saying, "Oh well, you're a rookie, you're not ready." what if they had a match at All Out, even on the pre-show, about what Serena Deeb was saying to Queen Aminata that you're not ready, and Queen Aminata just wants to kick her ass for that. And then Thunder Rosa has something to say, I don't remember. And then you had Hikaru Shida just wanting to win the title. And then you had Hikaru Shida win. So it's going to be Hikaru Shida versus versus Mercedes Moné. And definitely that's a great match. Like, Shida has a personality and a character. She can talk on the microphone. She knows how to make herself a big deal. So it's definitely not like a Marvel versus Capcom where it's somebody who can't talk or be charismatic on the microphone. That's just what somebody who can't talk means. Like, not somebody who just doesn't know how to be charismatic on the microphone. Like, look at Hologram. He can't talk. He doesn't know how to be charismatic on the microphone. He doesn't know how to tell a story and be a character. So when you do Shida versus Mercedes Moné, you know that on Dynamite or Collision next week, that really she and Mercedes can have stuff to say and create something out of it, really. But I really would have to say that overall, like I've said, I think they should come back to South Dakota because Tony was talking about that. There's a lot of people that like AEW down here, and the crowd was really, really hot. So I do think that, definitely come back to South Dakota, but have a show that you care about. I really think that this show felt like that there was a lot of people on the roster that wanted Labor Day weekend off. There was a lot of people on the roster that worked Wembley Stadium that didn't want to be there. And it kind of felt like, and it just really kind of felt like, that you had really no stars on the show except for Dustin Rhodes at the end, and then the other stars that you had was at least Hikaru Shida, but nobody really compelling and anything like that really. I wish they could have done more with this show. What if you had the Acclaim come down? What if you had Sasha Banks come down as well? Really, what if you had Okada challenge Kyle Fletcher? Or what if you had Hologram and Orange Cassidy, just talk to each other, and it's Orange Cassidy trying to make Hologram a proving ground, or if you had Okada come out and challenge Hologram or something like that. Really, there's so many things that you could have done to tie in. There's so many things that you could have done to really tie in. All Out, and that's what I was expecting from the show, was just to make it All Out a bigger deal, have at least 2 matches on the card that you're going to have, really. But I do think that they're going in the direction of FTR versus the Grizzled Young Veterans. The Acclaimed has a lot of charisma. What are you going to do with the Acclaimed? And then the next thing that I will say is that is that then what do you do with other wrestlers as well? And I also will say that even on Collision, it felt like they did the AEW's weakness, and AEW's weakness is match after match after match. And like I've said, many times, that match after match after match is not good because it feels like you're playing Marvel versus Capcom or another video game where you're going through wrestlers, you have no story or whatever. They did have another match where it was I think the Premier Athletes were facing somebody. I don't remember exactly who, but they did lose. And as we all know, that the Premier Athletes usually lose every single match. And the team that beat them, I don't remember their names at all. What if they were challenging for the tag team titles? And then you also had another match, and I believe it was you had those guys that looked like, I think they're called the Outlanders, if I'm correct. You had those guys that they're trying to look like these 1970s wrestlers, and one of them looks like Hulk Hogan, and then you had this other wrestler that he looks like Otis, but he has the barbecue sauce, and he hulks us up, and then you had a few other people in that group. But it's, again, as I said, why can't these wrestlers be serious? You have this wrestler that looks like Hulk Hogan. Why can't he do something with that? If he wants to spoof Hulk Hogan, but do what Jay Lethal does, so there was definitely a lot more that they could do, really, But I did feel like, as I said, it felt like everybody in AEW were just, trying to have Labor Day weekend. The people that were there felt like it was really their B show. people. So it was definitely unfortunate that I didn't feel like they cared. The only reason why I was there was just because I had never been to South Dakota before, but otherwise, they have a show in Massachusetts in a few weeks, and I live in Connecticut, but I won't be going to that one just because it's a collision show right before Arthur Ashe Stadium. I'd rather go to Arthur Ashe Stadium and spend my money there, but not on Collision or whatever. And I think that, as I said, class example of if you had stories, if you tied it into All Out, I would have called it a great show, and I would have reconsidered. But it was just a filler show, and that's not good for AEW.